as we have pointed out this morning, and as we've discussed, it is a year on. It's a year on since the election, of 2023. And while it is not the birthday of the government, and actually it took a very short amount of time for the three-party coalition to be formed and to get coalition agreements in place, it is a year since New Zealanders fundamentally voted for change. And every election is about more of the same or change. A year ago, we voted for change. And as I said, the demise of the Disinformation project, New Zealand First policy win on getting a rewrite of transgender inclusion in community sport. There have been changes. And most of your reaction this morning is that this country is back moving in the right direction, but probably not fast enough. Well, over the weekend, there was another anniversary. That was the 31st, I think, or 32nd conference of the New Zealand, or convention of the New Zealand First Party in Tauranga, a party written off actually a year ago, and most mainstream media saying they wouldn't make it. I might add that I and other commentators knew better. But joining us, get to smile at him, joining us by video link, is the leader of that party and Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand, Winston Peters. Looked like a good turnout, Winston, over the weekend. A lot of people, 900 people there.
It was a tremendous turnout, actually, and we were very encouraged and very grateful to our team that's worked so hard. And we've come through, as you know, years of doubt and all sorts of accusations, but they've been tough, and you're quite right. The country voted for a change, and they probably think we're not moving fast enough, and we should bear that in mind.
Yeah. 50 remits, I understand, at the convention. You didn't have time to get to all of them. One thing that caught my eye...
No, 42.
42, okay, and you got to, what, about 23 of them or 25 of them and didn't have time?
Yes, but that's right. It was all things... Timelines just drag on a bit. Sometimes conversations go on for too long, but they'll all go to the policy committee, so they're still in with a chance of being successful.
And I note there, you've got a youth wing, a youth branch of New Zealand First. What is that? People aged 45 to 55?
No, excuse me. Look, we've got, the youngest one was 16. We had a whole lot of young people, and when those protesters tried to upset the place, you would have seen the speed of the young people got to the door to make sure they were pushed out and didn't take over the event. Of course, your colleagues all rushed off to them, and I thought, lock the doors, don't let them back in, because if they're going to abandon a 900 audience to go and hear about 9 protesters, then something's wrong with our country.
All right. Look, I think I think the most notable thing is they've got a youth branch, but I looked at some of the remits they were putting forward, and things like how do we restrict or stop the damage that social media is doing to young people. And, of course, the government you're part of has banned smartphones during school times and the lot. But it indicates to me, Winston, that after 31, 32 years, please don't take this the wrong way, that New Zealand First has found a place in the political spectrum that will make it more than, and I said, please don't take this as an insult, a cult of personality based around your unique skill set. It seems to me it's an indication there is life for New Zealand First past Winston Peters.
Well, you put it very, very delicately. He should be a member of the diplomatic corps, the way you put that. But the reality is that we've always had a leader, and we'll have leaders in the future. But the concern that we had at the time was to ensure that we represented what I might call hardcore battling New Zealanders, the forgotten people. And that was clear as daylight on Sunday in Hamilton when they packed the halls, that those forgotten people think that they have a voice, and I believe that they have got one. So it was very, very good. And I don't know why other parties keep on talking about leadership, but because I think the reason is that some of them had 9 leaders in the same space of time that I've been there. That's a lot of uncertainty.
Well, you've only had one, and that's you, right? Forever, for 31 years.
Yeah, well,
is that a record?
Well, Lee Kuan Yew was there for a long time, and he did a pretty good job, didn't he?
All right, you're not in Singapore now, Mr. Peters.
Yeah, I know.
a year on since the election, and we've been posing the question, had a really interesting chat with Chris Trotter. Has the country changed? And do you think... I've made much note this morning of the demise of a thing called the Disinformation Project, which was a group of Marxist academics given at least maybe $850,000 a year by Jacinda Ardern to do very dubious research identifying Nazis online and telling people that we needed hate speech laws. They have announced that they are disestablishing. And many people and many of our listeners are saying, what a good job, but it's taken too long. It's taken a year to weed out that sort of Orwellian practice from government expenditure. Is the job done or not?
Well, in your questions, you sort of emphasise that we're not doing things with enough speed, and I don't disagree with you on that score. We've got to do things like action this day. If things make sense and you've asked all the questions, get it going. Don't let things drag. They go from days to weeks, weeks to months, and also almost to years, and all of a sudden nothing has happened. So you're quite right. They should have been disestablished in the first week because they had no legitimate democratic purpose. They were, you might call, control freaks. They were actually linguistic fascists in that context, not saying them personally, but the concept was.
Yeah. All right. So what remains to be done, and how do you, as a party, pressure the coalition or ensure that the coalition, and I'll be honest, many people this morning saying on issues around the treaty, and as I said, I think in some ways you and ACT agree on that, just you disagree on how to get there, but national for all the money in the world looks like the most reluctant part of this coalition when it comes to cultural change and real change.
Well, see, they were the inheritors or the latest generation of two massive disasters. They're going to the UN and signing up to UNDRIP when I had stopped the Labour Party between 2005 and 2008 of doing that. They went and signed up to it. And then they got rid of the foreshore and seabed legislation, which had been consulted with every coastal tribe right around this country. They'd all signed up to it. And Api Mawika said so. He told the Maori Party, you're talking rubbish. We have been consulted. And then in 2011, John Key and Finlayson changed the law, and look at the disaster it is. So they're caught by their past, and they need to abrogate that and say, look, that was a mistake. And we've got to go forward, where the sea is a gift from the heavens, so to speak. We didn't get here from Polynesia because the sea was owned by someone else. We always knew it was a highway. And yet you've got people trying to claim it as an acid valley. They're trying to claim the water from the sky as being theirs. And they've even made a claim at the Waitangi Tribunal for rights to outer space. How much madness can we go through before we start getting our sanity back?
All right. Look, one thing that perhaps hasn't changed, or the attitude of which hasn't changed in the year since the election, my erstwhile friends in the mainstream media, and boy, the start of the coalition government, you were taking them on. They seemed in the initial days after the election result on October 14th, 2023, to be in shock that their mates had lost, despite the best efforts of News Hub, Radio New Zealand, Television New Zealand, Stuff, The Herald and all. Have they changed in the last year? Do you think you are getting more balanced coverage from the mainstream media?
Well, I'd like to say so. I think in some cases they have, but many they have not. They are so introverted that post the election, like the Labour Party and like others, instead of saying, look, we better have a serious review here. What went wrong? What did we do not right? What policies did we have where we were a mistake? There are far too many, and also in the mainstream media, who think it was all the voters' fault. You see what's wrong here?
Yeah, well, the voters did the wrong thing, according to them. I also add, when we talk about the Disinformation Project, it was mainstream media which embraced them as the expert Nazi hunters for the government and appointed them as the high priests of public taste and what you were allowed to say online.
Well, look, I was stunned when I said that the public interest journalism fund was a bribe to the media, how many bristles in the media to have a go at me? I mean, the very concept of that, when you describe it, is exactly what I said it was. But they are so removed from what it might call all normal understanding, normal comprehension, that anything that would slightly suggest that what they were doing was wrong, they bristled at, and they're still bristling. But my message to them is there are one people out there in control of this country, and they're called the people. They're the voter.
All right. Let's come back to the weekend and to the events of Sunday. You didn't look overly upset in the coverage I saw at what was happening. I understand someone pushed Shane Jones. I first just want to check that he's physically okay and has weathered the storm.
I was going off to a press conference, and of course they were out the other side, and the media decided the press conference which they had asked me to do, they wouldn't attend. They'd deal with the protesters first. And so I started the press conference anyway and thought, if you don't get back, just too bad. Because, first things come first. I don't think Shane's okay, but the very idea that come along and start being aggressive physically is just wrong.
All right, and your message to the protesters, who I'll be honest, didn't look like the most rabid group. I think they had the tea towels on, the old Kafirs. They didn't look like the worst bunch of protesters you would have seen in your life, Winston.
No, but, as I told them, look, here I am. I've been over there to see the foreign minister of Jordan, of Egypt, the Palestinian Authority. I've seen foreign ministers from Indonesia and other Muslim countries. We've been to the United Nations. We've done our best to try and grasp this matter, and they come along and start shouting out things like, we're guilty of genocide. That is defamatory. That's slanderous. Traducing people's reputation with their extremism. They don't understand one thing. No one's going to listen when you make that sort of extraordinary claim.
Except the mainstream media, who repeat it ad infinitum, Mr. Peters.
Well, look, the meeting was packed out halfway through my speech, and all of a sudden they heard this protest, and they up and were gone. And I said to my people, I should have said to my people, shut the doors.
And don't
keep them out, because the meeting will go on.
All right. Look, well, happy birthday. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and let's see how the next year post-election goes, and whether or not, as you suggest, and many New Zealanders want, the pace of change can be increased. Oh, look, one thing I must mention, the Overseas Investment Fund, how far down the track is that before we see details?
Well, I think it should be very, very close. Now, I can't make that commitment because I'm not the only one responsible. But look, we desperately need to get going now. We've got to turn this economy around, and now. And a lot of these things, look, they're so proven to have worked internationally. We're not as though we're experimenting here. We're just borrowing a brilliant idea. Funny enough, with some of those people who borrowed the idea, borrowed it from us in the first place, but we stopped doing it. We started arguing for taxation neutrality. We started saying, you can't pick winners. And Lee Kuan Yew and the Irish and all those people went straight out there and picked winners. And boy,
and of course, people are going to say you're selling off the country and you're being hypocritical and you're flip-flopping on protecting on New Zealand for New Zealanders. And I'm sure you're going to come back and say either we're in business or we're not in business, and, we can go broke or be principled.
Well, Ireland is more Ireland today than it's ever been. Singapore is more Singaporean-owned than it's ever been. Those are things that are myths. It's how you go about it.
All right. Mr. Peters, I thank you for your time. Good talking as always. Winston Peters, Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, leader of the New Zealand First Party, 31 years. I went as a young television reporter, I think, for TV3. I went to the first New Zealand First conference in Hamilton, and I can remember some things haven't changed. I can remember angry crowds of people with grey hair with Zimmer frames clacking towards us in the media, saying nasty things about us. So some things never change, but it does strike me that the crowd, a youth wing in the New Zealand First Party, youth wing, people aged 45, 55, no, genuine youth wing, that is something. That is something.